Tonight on a special edition of EWTN News Nightly. A vow to end clergy sex abuse. A look back at the Vatican's historic 4-day summit on combating misconduct. We'll show you a report and have reaction from Rome, including why some survivors say they're disappointed. Birthplace of a saint. A look inside a museum dedicated to Mother Teresa in North Macedonia. And Divine Mercy. We take you to Lithuania and the origins of a popular feast day. On EWTN News Nightly for Friday, July 5th, 2019. Good evening from Washington, D.C. Thank you for joining us for this special edition of EWTN News Nightly. I'm Lauren Ashburn. Tonight, we look back at some of the stories from our Rome Bureau, beginning with the Pope's vow to wage a war on clergy sex abuse. His words came at the end of an historic 4-day summit in February, where bishops heard testimony of victims and talked about how to handle the worldwide crisis. Rome Bureau Chief Alan Holdren has a recap.
Pope Francis delivered his blueprint for tackling clergy sex abuse before 190 Catholic bishops and religious superiors.
Se nella Chiesa si rilevasse anche un solo caso di abuso.
He summoned the church leaders for a 4-day meeting. The goal? To make it clear clergy sex abuse and cover-ups are a global problem, threatening the very mission of the Catholic Church. After the gathering, the Vatican announced it will soon issue a new law to protect children that covers officials in the Holy See.
La tutela dei bambini.
The Pope also offered an 8-point pledge of priorities going forward. But survivors who came to Rome expecting solid, concrete action aren't satisfied.
There's nothing in his remarks about releasing documents that demonstrate the truth of how they are and have been covering up child sex crimes. So what that is secrecy.
Pope Francis did say he wants to change church law governing child pornography. Currently, the church only considers it a serious crime if the child in question is under the age of 14. The Pope wants to raise it to 18. It's not clear if the change was inspired by a recent case involving an Argentine bishop close to Francis. This young survivor is upset the Pope didn't say sorry and says the results of the meeting are just words. Vatican experts say the public is watching the church and growing impatient.
So now the public opinion is waiting, not only the victims, but the good Catholics and also the non-Catholics who believe in the role or who are interested in the role of the church and the social role and the moral role of the church are now waiting for precise norms and rules.
Alan Holdren is our EWTN Rome Bureau Chief, and he joins us now. Alan, many faithful are hopping mad that specific action did not come out of this summit. The Pope unveiled 8 guidelines in his Sunday address. Let's talk about those.
So, Lauren, the Pope made that list of guidelines. He topped it with the protection of minors itself. Also included was preparation and formation of candidates to the priesthood, accompanying victims, boosting and reinforcing the guidelines that seek to implement measures for proper protections. And also he added in curbing online pornography and also sex tourism.
Is anyone calling this meeting a success? I know a lot of survivors I have talked to and many faithful are not saying that.
Well, here in the Vatican, they say that it's a step forward. Just to gather all of these 190 representatives of bishops' conferences and also religious congregations worldwide is a big step. It had never happened before. It really was unprecedented. Also, if they were paying attention and if they choose to move the ball also on this specific issue, bishop accountability. They have a framework that Cardinal Blaise Cupich of Chicago proposed to the group, which they can use to hold each other accountable, but that will depend on the bishops themselves.
Well, this issue of cover-up by the bishops is also getting a lot of attention. So how did the summit specifically address accountability? One group said that they wanted to immediately enact canon law that says anyone found guilty, no matter when, is out.
Yeah, that didn't happen, Lauren. Many people were disappointed about that. We did hear from Archbishop Charles Scicluna, who's the Pope's point man for investigating abuse accusations, and he said that he considers personally the actual abuses to be on a par with their cover-up. And he said that he expects that to be enshrined in law. He's pushing for that, and he said that there's no turning back from this.
He said the wrath of God, he's going to, I think, come down with the wrath of God. Do you think, Alan, in all of your extensive coverage of the Vatican, that this is a turning point for this issue?
I don't think there is any turning back, like Archbishop Scicluna said, Lauren. They have gathered around this issue in Rome. They've talked about concrete measures. They have public opinion and the voice of the faithful in the world pushing this issue, and nobody's going to forget about it. And to say that nothing will come of this, I think, is impossible.
Alan Holdren, thank you so much, our EWTN Rome Bureau Chief.
Thank you, Lauren.
Many victims of abuse were in Rome for the summit and demanded transparency from top Vatican officials. Peter Isley of Ending Clergy Abuse joins us now. Peter, first of all, you joined us at the beginning of this conference. Now you're here at the end. And Cardinal DiNardo, the head of the U.S. bishops, had said that we may never fail these victims again. What is your reaction to his statement?
Well, he's already failed them out of this summit. They're coming out of this summit. They don't have a universal church law and norm that if you sexually assault and abuse a child, you're out of the priesthood. And they don't have a universal law and norm that if you've covered up for those crimes, you're out of the priesthood too. So that's already a big failure. And for Cardinal DiNardo, who's under investigation in Houston for some of the recent conduct about cases, I just find that kind of amazing for him to say that.
Was your voice heard at this summit?
Well, the world heard our voice. And to have survivors from around the world to come here, it's a very emotional time for me and place for survivors. And I brought with me a rosary, actually, from Uganda. These were blessed by the children of Uganda. The president of our organization has raised over $1 million to build a hospital run by nuns in Uganda. That's the kind of people that we have in our organization. And I hung on to this rosary. I can't tell you how difficult. It's right here. And, you know, my mother prayed the rosary every day of her life. Day and night she prayed the rosary. She went to Mass every day. And when she found out about what happened to me, I was in my 20s, and I told her, I was terrified to tell her because of her faith and what it meant to her and to our family. And she didn't leave the church. She didn't stop going to Mass. She kept praying the rosary. They talk about a handbook they need to put together. That's their #1 point Francis told them to do. They got the handbook. It's the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's their handbook. That's what they need to start using.
The church moves very slowly and governs collegially. What could the Pope have done keeping this in mind? I am struck by these two documents. As you mentioned, this is the 21 points of action for Pope Francis. These are yours. You say to immediately enact into universal canon law the fact that any cleric who has been found guilty of even a single act of child sex abuse, no matter when the act occurred, will immediately be removed from ministry and permanently removed from the priesthood. The very first one, as you just mentioned, from Pope Francis, is to prepare a practical handbook indicating the steps to be taken by authorities at key moments when a case emerges. It seems like these are pretty different.
Well, you know who doesn't move slowly? Sex offenders. They don't move slowly. I mean, Pope Francis, and I agree with him, he said out here in this balcony, he described priests who assault children as ravenous wolves. Ravenous wolves. And so he's still letting these ravenous wolves be unidentified and in ministry around the world right now? That doesn't make any sense. If you're saying these people are so dangerous, they're destroying our children, tearing them apart, I mean, you get them out of ministry, you get them out of harm's way. You don't have other meetings and make handbooks. You can do that later. And he didn't order these people to go back, these bishops to go back and do that. They should be on the ground, landing all over the place around the world, and that's the first thing they ought to do.
Would you agree, or would you disagree, that something has changed, though? Many say that the mere fact that the Pope has called this meeting a sign of progress?
Let me put it this way. The Pope has declared, he said, a war on child sexual abuse. He's got the generals all up there from around the world. They're going to fight this war. And Cardinal Marx gets up and he talks about, oh, we've destroyed documents. We've destroyed criminal evidence of child sex crimes. And then what? We move on to the next subject? I mean, it's really simple. This is not complicated. It's not difficult. This element of it particularly. You have to enact under universal church law. Why is this so difficult? That if you've raped and sexually assaulted a child and you're a priest and you've used a collar to do it, that's what that wolf is dressed in. Children don't know the difference between a wolf, say a dog. They think it's safe. You take that man out of harm's way.
Completely understand. Your point of view is so valuable to our audience. We will be checking in with you over the coming months. Thank you so much for joining us. Peter Isley, spokesperson for Ending Clergy Abuse and a survivor. This year marks the 35th anniversary of diplomatic relations between the United States and the Vatican. To celebrate, the choir of the Basilica of the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception here in Washington, D.C., performed in May in the Eternal City. Rome Bureau Chief Alan Holdren is back with more.
Angelic voices filled the Basilica of Santa Maria sopra Minerva in a concert honoring U.S.-Vatican relations established in 1984. During rehearsal earlier this week, choir director Peter Latona told us it's a professional and personal honor.
The connection between the United States government and the Vatican, for me personally, I see that as an opportunity for good, for what's important for and the values of my Catholic faith. If that can be connected to the world of government and politics, I think that's a good thing.
Soprano Sarah McKimmey of Washington, D.C. converted to Catholicism after joining the choir.
I feel like what we really do is set an example for what choral singing could be like in the church. And just, I'm a new Catholic too, so for me it's just an incredible thing to get to create music at this level.
The singers have a packed tour singing at masses throughout the Eternal City this week, but the highlight is performing for U.S. Ambassador to the Holy See and former choir member Callista Gingrich. She recognized the group's musical talent.
Its gifted professional singers lift our hearts and strengthen our faith. Throughout its illustrious history, the choir has performed for numerous dignitaries and heads of state, including Pope Benedict and Pope Francis.
The choir performed sacred hymns, some dating back to the 15th century, in the Roman Basilica, where the remains of St. Catherine of Siena are preserved, a treat for all listening to their celestial melodies. In Rome, Alan Holdren, EWTN News Nightly.
Coming up, a visit to a museum in North Macedonia dedicated to Mother Teresa. Welcome back to this special edition of EWTN News Nightly. Mother Teresa is best known for her work in the slums of Calcutta in India. But she was born into what is now North Macedonia. In May, Pope Francis visited the country and a museum dedicated to one of the most beloved figures in church history. Before the trip, EWTN Rome Bureau Chief Alan Holdren gave us a sneak peek.
A museum dedicated to Mother Teresa in Skopje stands on the site of the church where she was baptized. Built in 2009, visitors pay respects to the tiny nun who changed the world.
We've got visitors from all over the world, and the first thing that when they heard she was from here, she was not from India, it's very peculiar for them.
She was born Agnes Goncha Boyaciu in North Macedonia in 1910, the youngest of 3 children. At the age of 18, she joined the Sisters of Loreto, an Irish order of nuns with missions in India. In 1929, she moved to Calcutta, and in 1950, Mother Teresa started her own order, the Missionaries of Charity. Their main task, to love and care for the poor. In 2016, Pope Francis declared Mother Teresa a saint. Now he'll be paying homage to her with a visit to her museum. He'll also pray in its chapel. The museum's director, who's Muslim, says that he will pray alongside the Holy Father.
I would like to do a prayer, him in his religion and I in my religion, to do it together.
It'll be a short trip, just one day to the Balkan nation. The former Macedonian ambassador to the Holy See says the country has been waiting for a papal visit. He calls the Pope's visit to this former communist country historic and says expectations are high.
There will be a main prayer at the stadium of the city, and we are expecting about 40–50,000 people for that day, not just from Macedonia, for other countries as well.
Mother Teresa's legacy is expected to be the main focus of the trip. In Rome, Alan Holdren, EWTN News Nightly.
Up next, the Church and artificial intelligence. A Catholic priest and professor tells us about the benefits and threats from this new technology. And an inside look at the origins of Divine Mercy Sunday. Earlier this year, the European Union launched one of the first government-led efforts to address ethical guidelines for companies that create devices that show intelligent behavior. Think Amazon's Alexa or the Roomba robotic vacuum. The guidelines for artificial intelligence, or AI, came out after Google scrapped an AI ethics council headed by the president of a conservative think tank. Father Christian Mendoza teaches Catholic social teaching at the Pontifical University of the Holy Cross in Rome. Father, welcome to our broadcast.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here with you.
The Pope has ordered the Pontifical Academy of Life to dedicate 2 years to answering the ethical questions behind AI. You know, in some places, in Japan, for example, the emotional IQ of a robot can actually comfort people. So I want to know, is there a consensus that there is a negative ethical implication to AI?
Well, you know, the artificial intelligence is a big challenge for the church today because there are a lot of people who will lose their jobs and robots will substitute them. For the church, technology is an instrument that is very positive. It can be used for good, it can be used for evil. We have to think about the implications it has for the families, and we have to think about also how can we make use of this technology for the good.
The Pope has said that AI is a product of ingenuity, but it can cast a dangerous spell at producing nefarious outcomes. That makes me think of drones and invasions of privacy. So tell me, what is most important when you're looking at those threats?
Well, I think when we look at artificial intelligence, what we have to do is to think about how the people creating this world is thinking about. So artificial intelligence, we have to see it as an opportunity, and at the same time we have to challenge people to think about their employees and the people who will be exchanged by this technology.
This speaks to the dignity of the human person, doesn't it, Father Christian?
Exactly, because at the end, the dignity of someone doing something will never be substituted by a robot. Think about entering into a taxi. If the driver is a human being and you talk to him and you have an encounter, this is what Pope Francis is telling in his TED Talk. This is what the Pope is constantly telling us. We have to encounter the other, to touch his hand, to look at his eyes. It's not just about making efficient society. What we need is to make society more human.
Thank you so much for your insights. Father Christian Mendoza, professor at the Pontifical University of the Holy Cross in Rome.
Thank you very much.
Finally tonight, a look at the Feast of Divine Mercy, which was celebrated on April 28th. It's a Catholic devotion based on St. Faustina Kowalska's encounter with Jesus. Alan Holdren takes us to Vilnius, Lithuania, where an iconic image is located.
Saint Faustina was a Polish nun and mystic. She's known as the Apostle of Divine Mercy after reporting visions of Christ inside this house.
We are in St. Faustina's house, and in most important place in the house, in place where lived St. Faustina. And in this place, Sister Faustina had many meetings with Jesus, many visions of Jesus. In this place, she began write her diary. In this place, Jesus dictated for St. Faustina a chaplet of Divine Mercy. Was here in Vilnius, Sister Faustina met Father Sopochka.
Father Sopochka was Sister Faustina's spiritual director when she moved to Vilnius in 1933. He believed her reports and commissioned an artist to paint an image according to her account. It shows Christ with his right hand raised as if giving a blessing, and his left hand touching his chest. Two rays, one red, one white, are said to signify water and blood coming from his heart. Now a copy of the original painting is displayed in this chapel that used to be the artist's studio. Right here in absolute secrecy, under strict supervision by St. Faustina, the image was completed in 1934.
That strong tie with the image of Divine Mercy and the Mother of Mercy Chapel continues to this day, marking Vilnius very much as a city of mercy.
Now pilgrims come to the city in droves to visit the home where St. Faustina recorded her visions and conversations with Jesus in her diary.
The message of the Divine Mercy is very important for the Church nowadays, for all the world. And I invite you to come here in Vilnius to touch that message, to touch that experience of the Divine Mercy, to get it and to bring to all the world.
In 2005, the original image of Divine Mercy was transferred to the Holy Trinity Church in Vilnius and installed over the center of the altar. It's become an international shrine to the mercy of God. In Rome, Alan Holdren, EWTN News Nightly.
What a beautiful, beautiful story, and thank you to Alan Holdren for that. You know, Pope John Paul II canonized Sister Faustina in 2000 and established the first Sunday after Easter as Divine Mercy Sunday. And we thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Lauren Ashburn. Let's keep in touch online. Follow me at Lauren Ashburn on Twitter and Lauren Ashburn EWTN on Facebook. Good night, and God bless you.